goddamn get it done, will ya? Woo. When the blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in his rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York, so you know.
Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going over all the things you should be doing before you even start or drive your car. So I'm going to explain to you all these things that you need to do, and these are a must, and these are things even I do, and this is simple knowledge that anybody who owns a car should be doing to their car, regardless it's BMW, regardless it's a Ford. If you care about your car that much and you cherish your car, you will be simply checking these normal things that even when you pass your driving test, they teach you that you should be checking these things before you set off. So the first one I want to speak to you guys about is when you get inside a petrol or a diesel car, do not sit there letting the car warm up. That is very, very bad for the seals and the engine itself, and the oil cannot lubricate the engine properly because it sits at the bottom. The engine has to be moving and the revs have to be going for the oil to get up to the top of the engine to protect, lubricate all the engine. Now, a lot of people sit there letting their cars idle. That is a complete no-no, and it increases emissions, and that's why a lot of the countries do not want that. Any kind of cars sitting left idling. That's the whole reason they invented start-stop, for that reason as well. When you first start your car, drive off. That's the only way to get your car properly warmed up. All you're doing while sitting there running is having the seals expand while as they get hot on all the gaskets, and that will cause your leaks. It's better to drive and get them up to operating temperature. That way they can keep hot and cold and keep the temperature fluctuating properly. Where if you just leave it and just sitting on your drive, for instance, letting it warm up, that's not the way to do it at all. The second thing I want to speak about, which a lot of people don't ever check as well before they start the car, is the most important thing is your brake lights. Now, a lot of people, especially in the UK, used to remove these and brakes, and in that way they could make fake accident claims. And this is a common problem by what a lot of people do. They'll remove their brake light bulbs and then a car will hit them from behind because they never had no brake lights. Another common problem is a lot of people like to do brake checks at high speed to try and get someone off the back of them if they're too close up the back of their car. This is something a lot of you should be doing, is checking your brake lights. It's the one thing a lot of people never seem to check, is if your brake lights are working. A simple way to check if they're working is back your car up as back as possible, go in your car at night time, or get someone to come out the car and go around the back and check if your brake lights are working. The next one is park it on a fluorescent or at night time on like a door or something like that, and then push your brakes to see if they're actually working. A lot of people are going to say, but you have the third brake light. Yes, you do, but a lot of people disconnect that, and sometimes even the LEDs go in that, so that will not work either. So it's always best to check your brake lights here, because it's another reason why a lot of you end up failing your MOTs or your inspections, because they're not working, because obviously that is critical to letting people know when you're actually gonna stop. The next one on these, which a lot of you guys never seem to check when you first start your car up, is if you've got any leaks from underneath your car. Now, the ones you need to be looking for is your brakes. If you've got any brake fluid on the floor from your brake lines leaking, or a burst brake pipe, any kind of things like that, and especially on BMW, the brake lines corrode and rust, and they have been known to burst while driving, and a lot of people with BMs will know that. Especially in the UK, corroded brake lines is famous here in the UK. If you don't know how to locate your brake fluid reservoir, a simple trick is to open your bonnet and check where your brake fluid reservoir is. For instance, on this BM, it's located here on the left side underneath the plastics, and as soon as it falls below a certain level, especially a brake fluid, it will throw the brake light on the car, and you'll see a red brake light where the brake fluid has gone below a certain level where it's not holding pressure, which means you have a leak in one of the systems, which is urgent and it needs to be taken care of immediately, because that's your livelihood inside the car's hands if your brakes are not performing as the way they're meant to. The next one I want to speak about is tire pressure. Tire pressure is very, very important that you check that, because that will have an adverse effect on your braking. That also have an adverse effect on your fuel consumption, and it also have an adverse effect on your steering in general, because if your tires are flat on this side and high on the other side, which most cars these days come with a tire pressure monitoring system, all them lights on the dash these days are all money lights, which are because a lot of people run to the dealer to find out what's wrong. Check your tyres, because it will, like I said, it will cause your steering to be all out and you'll be thinking why you think your tracking's gone, which is not. Also check your tyre pressure before a long journey, because it's critical for braking. You're going to be braking a lot on the highway or motorway, so it's critical that you check that, and it's going to have an effect on your braking as well. Your braking won't be as specific as it usually is with full tyre pressure, so do make sure you actually check that, because obviously a lot of people are not aware when you go through potholes it can cause a puncture, or you might have run over a nail or a screw somewhere else which could have just damaged your tyre, especially if your tyres are old or they're aging or they've got cracks already. Then you'll actually notice, a lot of people don't actually notice, but a lot of cracks on tyres end up behind the back of tyres which you don't even see unless you turn your wheels out. So just make sure to check them. You know, you might get some little kid who decides to let your tyres down and inflate them one night, so you just don't know. Just make sure you always check your tyre pressure. Buy a little portable tyre inflator like I've got myself, and I check my tyres all the time to make sure they're at the full pressure they should be before a long journey or before I'm traveling anywhere on the car. Another thing that you should never do with any car, regardless it's BM or not, and this is very, very common on the M5s and the M3s, a lot of people just redline their car while it's cold, and you can always tell if it's cold because if you guys look right here, you've got these lines which go up here, and that's to stop you redlining it until the needles come down. As you'll see there, this line comes down as the car warms up and it comes below here, where it's fine to redline it once the oil's got up to temperature and it's protecting the engine. But it's the same on the M5s and M3s. You have a graph here, a bar that will keep going down as the car warms up, and that's to stop you causing damage to the car. It's warning you not to redline it to that limit until the car warms up. You still get a lot of idiots who decide to redline the M5s and M3s while cold, just to show off to their friends and just to show off the sound, and that is a complete no-no. Don't ever rev any engine while cold, even an M52, N54, never, because especially on an M54, because of the turbos, they're not lubricated properly yet with the oil and they can end up blowing. That's why as well, especially, do not redline a cold engine, especially with turbos as well, because the oil is not protecting the turbo, and this is why a lot of the turbos end up failing, because people are redlining them and thrashing the turbo before it's even got up to temperature. So that's another complete no-no you must not do when you first start your car. Another thing to check for is to make sure you don't have any oil leaks underneath your car, because if you've got oil leaks and you're losing oil, what many people have known, their plug has started leaking and it's leaked all the oil out or from their gearbox or their engine, you will destroy your car. So always check if you've got an oil leak, or you know, you could come out one morning and somebody could try to vandalise your car, and a lot of people who are mechanics know what to do. They will just take out your sump plug from your sump if they can get to it, or it's easily accessible. From cars that don't have undershields on them, they can easily get your sump plug, drain out all your oil, and then you go to start it and destroy your whole engine. People have been known for that, especially here in the UK, to go and release your sump plug or your gearbox plug and then completely destroy the whole gearbox or the engine on the car, especially if you've got a lot of people that don't like you. That is a common problem by a lot of people that they do here. So do check that before you even think of starting your car, not only to protect your engine, but it also protects your car as well, because of the fact if someone is trying to be a hater, you will catch them out before they thought they were smart. So something you need to be checking is any kind of leaks on the floor that is unexpected. Do not drive your car, get it seen to immediately, because you don't know what that oil leakage is. It could even be brake fluid, it could be oil, it could be anything, but it's better to be safe than sorry, because if you start that car and it doesn't have oil or the gearbox doesn't have fluid, you will destroy your whole engine, then you'll be needing a new engine, which will be more expensive. So it's always best to check that. Now another one here is, if you've got an automatic gearbox, do not be thrashing this from cold. I get so many people having problems with their gearbox, and you know, this car has been so reliable. You guys know, if you watch my videos, how long I've had this car now. It's coming up nearly 3 years I've owned this E60, and the gearbox has been faultless. It was serviced before I bought it. If you maintain it correctly and you don't redline it from cold, and you actually let the car warm up just a bit for like 5 minutes and then drive off, let the gearbox fluid come up to temperature, so that way you can actually drive the car properly. Because the way you got to see it is, the gearbox internals need the fluid to get round them so they can protect them, because when you're hammering it from cold, there's no fluid around it, so it's rubbing friction to friction, which is metal to metal all the time, with no fluid to actually lubricate the moving components inside the gearbox. Do not thrash your automatic gearbox, and this doesn't just apply for BMW, this applies for all cars with an automatic gearbox. These have a lot of fluid in them, and the fluid is there to protect them, and a lot of people don't understand that with any automatic gearbox. Do not redline these cars if you've got an automatic gearbox or any car for that matter, it's very, very important that you come up slowly and just, as I said, drive the car normally until it's up to temperature and then do as you wish. Now the next one, now I know all BMW, probably people are going to thrash me for this, but it's to make sure your indicators are working on the outside. And as you see here, you can see if they're working, and if they're not working, you will end up seeing a faster flash than intended. So for instance, instead of it flashing the normal like that, you end up seeing it flash even faster, which means one of your indicators are out as well. And as you'll see here, that one's working as well. Now this is something I always make sure, this is something we have to make sure that these are fully working, especially here in the UK for MOT, as all this kind of stuff is checked. The same with our hazards, the same with our belts, the same with everything. All these kind of things are checked, so I have to make sure it's all working. And yes, I do use my indicators, because I'm not one of them drivers that decide not to use my indicators when driving. I know a lot of people stereotype BMW drivers, but I am one to actually use them. Okay guys, so as you've just seen now, I've just gone over the things you should do before you even start your car the moment you go out. It's very, very important that you actually check all this, because this is critical to you maintaining your engine and actually looking after your car itself. A lot of people do not know these things, and a lot of people do go out and just drive the car and have no clue what they're actually doing, especially people who have just passed their test, are not car savvy, they don't have a family that's very car savvy either, and then they end up destroying their engine and wonder why their car is running them into the ground. A lot of people with BMWs especially, you'll get a lot of people who buy these cars, or their mum or their dad will buy it for them. They're not car savvy, buy it because they want it, because it's in fashion. They will go and drive it, have no clue to look after it, and these are the kind of things that a lot of people end up running into problems because they just don't look after it. As I said, do make sure you let everything get up to temperature slowly, especially on the gearbox. This is why the gearbox end up grenading on BMs, because of that reason. And automatic gearboxes, especially on all cars, if you don't let the oil circulate properly and get up to temperature, you will destroy the gearbox, redline it from cold. You got to remember, fluid is thick and it only breaks down and becomes very thin once it's up to temperature. Therefore, it can actually protect the engine and protect the gearbox. While it's cold, it sits there very thick and needs to come up to temperature and move yourself around and protect all the moving parts inside the gearbox and the engine itself. So do make sure to check all that before you're driving. So thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.